CEO, said, "Pretend you love me for 10 minutes. Single dad janitor's response shocked everyone. The city glowed like a restless jewel against the dark velvet of the night. Towers of glass and steel pierced the sky, their lights flickering like stars refusing to die. At the center of it all stood Raymond Enterprises, a fortress of ambition, power, and wealth. To the world, it was untouchable, a symbol of prestige. But within its towering walls, silence lingered, broken only by the quiet rhythm of a mop sliding across polished marble floors. Daniel Carter, the man behind that mop, worked with a patience born not of choice, but of necessity. His hands were rough, his back weary, yet his movements carried a quiet dignity. He was not merely a janitor. He was a father, a single father, left to shoulder the weight of the world the day his wife closed her eyes forever. Since then, his life had been nothing but sacrifice. Each night spent in labor, so that each morning his little girl, Emily, could smile without knowing hunger. As he worked, his mind drifted to her. Her laughter, her tiny hands tugging at his sleeve, her soft voice asking, "Daddy, will you be home before I fall asleep?" Tonight, as on most nights, the answer had been no. The ache in his heart was heavier than any mop or bucket he carried. Upstairs, the building's top floor glittered with a different kind of burden. Elena Raymond, CEO of Raymond Enterprises, stood in the aftermath of a night she wished she could erase. She had attended a gala where whispers of wealth and power circled like vultures, and it was there her world cracked. Her fiancé, the man she thought would stand by her side, had humiliated her before everyone, breaking off their engagement in a cruel display. The sting of betrayal clung to her like ice, and the mask of strength she wore now threatened to shatter. Her heels clicked angrily again as the marble as she entered the grand lobby. Her shoulders were straight, her chin high, but her eyes betrayed her. They were not the eyes of a ruthless CEO tonight. They were the eyes of a woman abandoned, of someone who had built her empire only to find herself utterly alone within it. Daniel looked up. His gaze met hers, and for a moment the world stilled. She was the untouchable queen of the building. He was the invisible janitor who swept beneath her throne. Yet in that instant, she did not see judgment in his eyes. Not pity, not curiosity. What she saw was calmness. Gentle, grounding, unshaken by her storm. It unsettled her. It disarmed her. It was the first time in years someone had looked at her not as Elena Raymond, CEO, but simply as a woman, wounded and human. She should have walked past him. She should have ignored him. But her feet betrayed her pride. She lingered just a moment too long, her chest rising and falling like she was holding back words she dared not speak. Daniel lowered his eyes again, respectfully, returning to his mop. But inside, he wondered, who was this woman? This stranger whose pain leaked through even the cracks of her pride. He sensed it, though he could not explain how. Perhaps it was because he too knew the taste of loneliness. Perhaps broken souls recognize each other in silence. She opened her mouth, as though to speak, then stopped herself. Her jaw tightened, her pride rebuilding its walls brick by brick. Without a word, she turned, her heels echoing through the empty lobby. But even as she walked away, she could feel his steady presence behind her, quiet, unassuming, and strangely comforting. That night, as Daniel wrung out his mop and Elena slipped into her car, neither could shake the oddness of their encounter. Two worlds had brushed against each other for a fleeting moment, one of glass towers and power, the other of humble sacrifice and love for a child. Neither of them knew it yet, but that simple meeting would become the spark of something that neither status nor circumstance could contain. And as the lobby doors closed behind her, Elena's hand trembled ever so slightly. A thought formed in her mind, dangerous, desperate, and impossible, a thought she would not dare speak aloud. Not yet. But soon she would. And when she did, Daniel's life would never be the same. Elena sat in the back seat of her sleek black car, the city lights blurring past her window. Her reflection in the glass looked strong, flawless, unshaken, but her trembling hands told another story. She pressed her palm against her lips, willing herself not to cry. Raymond Enterprises was her kingdom, and queens did not weep. Yet tonight, she felt like nothing more than a woman abandoned. Daniel's face lingered in her thoughts, steady, calm, unyielding in a way she had never known. His eyes had unsettled her, not because they were sharp, but because they were kind. And in kindness, She had felt something she had forgotten long ago. Safety. By the time her driver pulled up to her mansion, the weight of the night had settled into her bones. She dismissed him quickly, stepping into her cavernous home that felt more like a museum than a place of warmth. Crystal chandeliers glittered, expensive paintings lined the walls, but none of it filled the silence. She sank into a chair, staring at her phone as messages of gossip lit up the screen. Her engagement was the talk of the city. Headlines were already calling her the jilted queen. Her pride burned, her loneliness gnawed, and her heart ached in ways she couldn't name. And then, without fully understanding why, her thoughts returned to the janitor, to Daniel, to the man who had seen her tonight without judgment, without pity. A dangerous thought whispered in her mind. What if he could help me? The next night she walked into the lobby again. The marble floors gleamed, and once more he was there. Daniel, mop in hand, moving with quiet steadiness. He looked up when her heels clicked across the floor, his brow furrowing slightly. She rarely came down here. Elena's throat tightened. She had rehearsed nothing, yet the words spilled out before she could stop them. Pretend you love me. For 10 minutes. The mop slipped slightly in his hands. Water dripped onto the polished floor. His eyes widened in disbelief. Ma'am? What? Her voice hardened, but beneath the steel it trembled. Just pretend. 10 minutes. That's all I ask. Daniel straightened, his jaw tight. He wanted to laugh at the absurdity, to remind her that he was a janitor and she was the CEO. Their worlds didn't touch, but then he saw it. Her eyes. Behind their icy walls was something raw, broken, desperate. The same loneliness he had seen in Emily when she asked why her mother never came home again. He should have walked away. He should have told her no. But his heart betrayed him. He saw not a CEO demanding the impossible, but a woman begging to be seen, to be saved, if only for a moment. Against his better judgment, he nodded. Elena exhaled, her shoulders trembling ever so slightly, though she tried to mask it with a cold smile. She stepped closer, so close he could smell the faint trace of her perfume. Expensive, intoxicating, yet softened by something fragile beneath. Daniel's chest tightened. He was about to step into something dangerous, something he could never take back. He didn't know that in saying yes, his world would begin to unravel. And as her hand brushed against his arm, Elena whispered again, softer this time. 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes. But in the hollow silence of the lobby, with her eyes searching his, Daniel already knew 10 minutes would never be enough. And what began as pretend was about to blur into something neither of them could control. Daniel's agreement hung in the air like a fragile secret, one that neither of them fully understood. He stepped closer, hesitant at first, then with a quiet resolve that surprised even himself. His arm moved around her shoulders, slow and careful, as though he was afraid she might break. Elena stiffened at the touch, her pride screaming at her to pull away, but her heart betrayed her. She leaned in, just enough to feel the steady rise and fall of his chest. The marble lobby, vast and echoing, suddenly felt small, like it had shrunk into a world that belonged only to them. The sound of dripping water from Daniel's mop bucket faded, the weight of her humiliation disappeared, and for the first time in days, Elena felt safe. She had expected it to feel false, mechanical, a performance of comfort, but it didn't. His embrace was nothing like the cold, rehearsed gestures she'd endured from her fiancé at countless galas. Daniel's touch was real, unpolished, uncalculated. His hands, rough with years of labor, carried a strange gentleness, as though holding her was an honor, not an obligation. Her breath caught. She didn't expect the sudden thrum in her chest, the dangerous realization that she liked this, liked him, even if she refused to admit it. She tilted her head slightly, just enough for her cheek to brush against his shirt. The faint scent of soap and faint traces of dust clung to him, not cologne, not luxury, but honest, human warmth. Daniel, on the other hand, was at war with himself. Every second felt like stepping deeper into forbidden territory. He told himself it was just 10 minutes, nothing more. Yet when her weight rested against him, fragile and trembling, something inside him cracked. She wasn't Elena Raymond, untouchable CEO. She was just a woman, hurting, and he couldn't help but want to shield her from it. The clock on the far wall ticked louder in the silence, each second threatening to shatter the illusion. Daniel forced himself to keep count. 1 minute, 2 minutes. 5. He reminded himself this wasn't his world, wasn't his place. And yet, he didn't let go. Elena closed her eyes. For those stolen moments, she wasn't the abandoned fiancée, plastered across headlines. She wasn't the ruthless businesswoman everyone feared. She was simply Elena, a woman whose heart longed for something real. And Daniel, this quiet janitor with tired eyes, was giving her that. 9 minutes. His heartbeat was steady beneath her ear, grounding her in ways money never had. She dreaded the end, dreaded the moment reality would crash back in. And then the 10th minute came. Daniel's arm lingered a heartbeat longer before he slowly, carefully pulled away. His head bowed slightly, a gesture of respect, but also a silent reminder. This was never real. Elena's lips parted as if to protest, but no words came out. Her heart raced, refusing to believe what her mind screamed. She wanted to pull him back, to steal another minute, another breath in the warmth of his arms. But her pride chained her tongue. She straightened, smoothing her dress as if to cover the crack in her composure. "That's enough," she whispered, her voice sharper than she intended. Daniel nodded once, stepping back with the quiet humility of a man who knew his place. But his eyes betrayed him. They carried something unspoken, something neither of them dared acknowledge. For Elena, the 10 minutes should have ended. But as she turned to leave, she realized with a jolt that her chest still ached with the echo of his touch. And for Daniel it should have been nothing. Yet as he gripped his mop again, his hands trembled ever so slightly, betraying the truth he was too afraid to name. Neither of them said it, but both of them knew. 10 minutes had changed everything, and as the lobby lights dimmed in the silence of the night, one thought lingered in the air, heavy and undeniable. 10 minutes would never be enough. The lobby lights faded into silence that night, but neither Daniel nor Elena slept soundly. By morning, Raymond Enterprises buzzed with whispers. Some claimed they had seen the CEO smiling in the dead of night. Others insisted she had been seen laughing with the janitor. In a place where reputation was currency, gossip spread faster than fire. Assistants exchanged knowing glances near the elevators. Secretaries leaned closer in hushed tones, speculating about scandal. "Elena Raymond, with him?" one whispered, barely able to believe it. "With the janitor?" another scoffed, shaking her head. Some smirked, already sharpening their knives. Others looked on with curiosity, sensing something deeper. Elena herself sat in her glass-walled office, unable to focus. The skyline gleamed outside, yet her mind drifted to the night before. 10 minutes. 10 dangerous, unforgettable minutes. Her chest still ached with the echo of his touch. Her pride screamed at her to dismiss it, to bury it under steel and ambition. But her heart betrayed her. By mid-morning, she couldn't stand the weight of her own thoughts. She pressed the intercom. "Send Daniel Miller to my office." The assistant froze. "The janitor, ma'am?" "Yes," Elena snapped, though her voice wavered slightly. Minutes later, the door opened with a soft click. Daniel stepped inside. Quiet, composed, his uniform clean but plain. He stood near the door, eyes downcast, as though afraid to break the illusion of the space. Her office was vast. Polished wood, golden frames, shelves stacked with awards. Daniel looked as though he didn't belong in this world. And yet, when her eyes landed on him, she felt he belonged more than anyone. "Do you know why you're here?" Elena asked, her tone clipped, rehearsed. Daniel's gaze lifted, steady, unshaken. "To be reprimanded, I assume." Her breath faltered at his calmness. She should have said yes, should have lectured him about boundaries. Instead, the words slipped out unplanned. "Why did you agree last night?" The question hung between them, raw and unpolished. Daniel blinked, caught off guard, but his expression softened. He took a slow breath, then answered simply, "Because for 10 minutes, you looked like you need it's saving." Her pulse skipped. The honesty in his tone struck deeper than any flattery. "And I know what it feels like," he added quietly, almost to himself. The air thickened. Elena leaned back in her chair, her composure cracking. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her not as CEO, but as a woman. Her chest tightened. She wanted to ask what he meant. What pain had carved such stillness in his eyes? What ghosts haunted him when no one else was looking? But the words tangled in her throat, caught between pride and longing. Daniel shifted, as though ready to leave, to return to his world below. Her heart lurched. She didn't want him to go. "Elena?" he asked gently, noticing her silence. She straightened, her mask returning with a snap. "This stays between us," she ordered, her tone cold again. Daniel nodded once. No argument, no judgment, but his eyes lingered on hers, carrying that same quiet understanding. It unnerved her, because in that look, Elena realized something terrifying. The walls she had spent years building were beginning to crack, and Daniel Miller, the janitor, was the one holding the hammer. Elena's walls fell little by little, though she fought to keep them standing. She told herself it was curiosity, nothing more, but deep down she knew the truth. Daniel had unsettled something inside her. At first it was excuses, a chance encounter in the lobby, a sudden need to ask about building schedules, or a fabricated reason to call him into her office. Yet, every time he appeared, the silence between them spoke louder than her words. She began to notice details she had once overlooked, the way his eyes softened when he mentioned his daughter, the way his laughter, though rare, felt unforced and pure. Each stolen moment pulled her closer, each glance another thread weaving them together in ways she wasn't prepared to admit. Then came the discovered. In a file she stumbled upon by accident, she saw his name not just among employees but in old academic records, top of his class, business studies, a mind that once rivaled the brightest in the field. Confusion gripped her. Why was a man like him mopping floors? The answer came not through documents, but through Daniel himself. One evening, as she lingered longer than she should have, she asked. His eyes, usually steady, darkened. "I had plans once," he admitted softly. "Dreams. But when my family needed me, those dreams stopped mattering." He didn't go into detail that night, but she caught the shadow in his gaze, the kind carved only by loss, and suddenly, the janitor she thought she knew wasn't just a man of quiet strength. He was someone who had bled for love, for family, for survival. A week later, driven by a pull she couldn't resist, Elena found herself standing outside his modest apartment. It was worlds away from the glass towers she lived in, yet as Daniel opened the door, warmth greeted her like sunlight. The space was small, humble, but alive with love. That was the night she met Emily, a bright-eyed girl with laughter that filled the air like music, carrying the same light as her father. Emily's small hand slipped into Eleanor's without hesitation, her innocent trust disarming the CEO who had conquered boardrooms yet feared intimacy. Eleanor watched as Daniel, sitting at the worn kitchen table, gently parted Emily's hair into sections. His rough hands, hands that scrubbed marble floors night after night, moved with surprising tenderness as he braided his daughter's hair. It was a picture of love so pure, so unshakable, that Elena felt her chest ache. In that moment she realized a truth she had spent her life denying. Wealth wasn't measured in skyscrapers or bank accounts. It was here, in a tiny apartment where laughter still lived, in the bond between a father and his daughter, in a man who had lost everything yet still gave more than most men of fortune ever could. But as her gaze lingered on Daniel's bowed head, on Emily's joyous smile, an unease rept into her chest. This world of his was beautiful, but it was fragile. And the more she stepped into it, the more she risked shattering it, shattering them both. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, their light glinting off champagne glasses and sequined gowns. Eleanor moved through the crowd like a queen among watchful subjects, but every smile felt sharp, every whisper heavier than the last. "They say her fiancé left her. I heard she's losing her edge. She's slipping. Look at her." The words cut deeper than she admitted, though her expression remained carved from stone. Reputation was everything in this world, and tonight it felt like hers was crumbling. Daniel stood at the edge of the gala, a shadow against the glittering stage. He hadn't come for the lights, the music, or the power plays. He had come for Emily, who sat near the corner, her little hands clutching a glass of juice, wide-eyed at the glamour she rarely saw. But Elena's eyes found him anyway. Amid the swirling colors and polished masks, his presence was grounding, real, solid, unshaken. Her pulse quickened. She crossed the room, each step steady, though her heart raced. "Daniel," she whispered when she reached him, her voice trembling under the orchestra's hum. He turned, his gaze steady, waiting. "Pretend again," she pleaded softly. "Just for 10 minutes." The request hung in the air, fragile, desperate. Her pride told her not to ask, but her loneliness begged otherwise. Daniel's brow furrowed. He searched her face, saw the cracks she tried to hide, the weight pressing down on her shoulders. But this time, something inside him shifted. His answer came not with hesitation, but with certainty. "No, Elena," he said, his voice low, steady. Her chest tightened. For a heartbeat, she thought he was refusing her altogether, that he would step back into the shadows and leave her alone in the fire of judged. Meant. But then his eyes softened, the corners of his mouth curving in something dangerously close to a smile. "Not pretend," he said, the words falling like a vow. Not any more. Before she could speak, before fear could chain her tongue, Daniel stepped forward. In front of CEOs, board members, investors, the pillars of power who measured worth in dollars and titles, he closed the space between them and kissed her. It was not rehearsed, not an act, not 10 minutes borrowed from loneliness. It was real, raw, unapologetic. Gasps rippled through the room. Champagne glasses froze mid-air. Conversations halted in stunned silence. The CEO with the janitor. But Elena didn't hear them. The world blurred, narrowed into nothing but the warmth of his lips, the strength of his hands, the steady certainty she had longed for. For once in her life she didn't care about appearances, or the sharp-edged whispers of society. She cared only about this man, this impossible, undeniable man, who had broken through every wall she had built. When Daniel pulled back, his forehead rested gently against hers. "No more pretending," he murmured. Her chest ached, not from fear, but from the dangerous, beautiful truth swelling inside her. She had begged him once for 10 minutes. Now she realized she didn't want minutes. She wanted forever. Around them, the gala buzzed with shock, scandal, outrage. Yet Elena Raymond, the woman who had once ruled by reputation, smiled, truly smiled, without a trace of fear, because love had rewritten the rules, and the 10 minutes she once clung to had become the beginning of forever.